What's up, everybody? It's Soren Baker here on Unique Access Entertainment. As always, please hit that subscribe button. It's right down there and it's free. That enables us to keep coming to y'all as often as possible with as many interviews as possible. Now, today, we have the honor and privilege of being joined by the icon Terminator X. Thank you for coming through, sir.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yes, yes. So Terminator X and I are both part of the Chris Thomas radio show that's out in Vegas, and we connected through that, and lots of great things going on. Shout out Chris Thomas, Totally Medley, DJ Mad Links, Layla Lopez, the whole crew making it happen. So Terminator, as far as you and your history, so much to go through, and I wanted to take it back to the beginning. I read, heard different things over the years about one of your friends had moved into the neighborhood where you were growing up, and when he let you get on his turntables, that's kind of how you got into it. Is that true? Not true? Partially true?
It's part of it. That's part of it. So I've always been interested in music. So when I was younger, I had interest in playing piano or keyboards and the drums, and it just did that. I just never went through with that. The drums, I couldn't. I was not good at the kick drum. I couldn't. My feet wouldn't move like I wanted wanted them to move. So I grew up in the era of Grandmaster Flash and that whole thing. So uh I was I grew up in New York, like I said, when that was going on. So all the tapes, Grandmaster Flash, Cool Herc and the Herculoids, all that sort of stuff. I was able to hear all that stuff, and that was inspiring for me. Um, and to the point, yeah, I was interested in being a DJ. So I had like we at the house like everybody else. I had a stereo with a turntable, and you had a receiver back then, what it's called, with a tape player on it. So I would go back and forth. I would queue up, like say, Good Times. I would queue up Good Times on a cassette deck, and then I would try to DJ between the turntable and the cassette deck by turning between the phono and the cassette button. So then, like you said, yeah, a brother by the name of Rudy Lavelle. He was the first one that had two turntables and a mixer, and we were in another friend's house, Stephen Rice. Shout out to Roosevelt, and we were in his basement, and he let me get on the turntables. I was like, I can do this. I can do this. It was. I was like, I don't found my niche. I don't found my niche. So yeah, and I started doing basement part. Well, eventually I got my own turntables. I started doing basement parties. That's before I could drive. I would load up my little equipment in a shopping cart from the grocery store and take it to a house and do a house party. Then after that, my brother and his friend built me this huge speaker. When I tell you it was huge, it was huge. The back of this speaker, to give you an idea, was a full 4x8 sheet of plywood.
Wow.
So it was huge. And then I had another friend, DJ Mike Robinson, first class crew, Roosevelt. Um, he had a big bass bottom, like it was a movie theater type Altec voice of the theater speaker, a big subwoofer. And I put my big speaker on top of his. Oh man, you can forget about it. Anyway, I did a after my brother built the speaker. Um, his friend that helped him build the speaker had a graduation party, from high school graduation party, and the whole town pretty much came out, and that's pretty much when I became a name locally in Roosevelt as a DJ, and from that point, it just got bigger and bigger. Yeah,
Wow. Okay.
yeah.
And with that, I'd also like a lot of people, it seemed like the magnificent Jazzy Jeff was a big influence or inspiration for you as well. In a sense, seems like obviously I didn't become a world famous DJ like you, but I was always trying to figure out how things were happening. And,
Absolutely.
and I couldn't figure out what Jazzy Jeff was doing or how he was doing that.
So I'll tell you that story. Well, first and foremost, I have to shout out Grandmaster Flash. Um, he probably was my biggest first inspiration. Uh, he was just the guy. Flash was the guy that kind of did it the best. Um, he had, they had him and Furious Five had the records out. The tapes. He just seemed to be the king of the DJs, the original DJs. And then, like you said, Jeff. The first time I heard the Transformer scratch, I was like, "How did he do that?" So I played around for a while. Then how I ended, I don't know how he did it. He may have had a different mixing, but I learned to do it with the phono line switch. If you remember those, the up and they had a phono line switch up on top of the fader, and I was like, that gave me the effect to do the transformer scratch. Yeah, so Jeff, and I can tell you, Jeff. Oh my goodness, he's the most precise, accurate. Like we toured together, and there was never if there was during the whole entire tour, if there was one record skip or anything like that, there might have been one the whole entire tour. Maybe and it might not have been. So he is so precise. He's technical and accurate and artful. He's like, yeah, he deserves all his accolades.
Yeah, that's for
Yeah,
sure. He
yeah,
is, in my opinion, the best. He's phenomenal. I've only got to
yes,
see
sir.
him a couple times in person, but every time I've been blown away. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so, so as you're developing and as you're getting your house parties going, uh, obviously the different members of Public Enemy were doing different things. How did you actually get in the mix with the group?
Well, we're all from the same town. Once again, shout out Roosevelt. Um, so I grew up around the corner from one of the brothers that was working with Spectrum City. Spectrum City, or Spectrum initially, was a DJ company. At the you know at the time that I was turned on to them, it was Hank Shockley, Keith Shockley, um, Chuck D, Butch Cassidy, which is I lived around the corner from him. I'll continue with that. And I'm trying to think of anybody else then. I think that was it. And they were like the king of the Roosevelt DJs, so to speak. They took it seriously as a business. They did a lot of college gigs, high school gigs. Um, they would rent out halls and throw gigs, that kind of thing. They were on a radio station, WBAU, Adelphi University. Uh, so anyway, and in the club out on Long Island. Anyway, so they were looking for a second DJ. Keith Shockley was the only DJ at the time, and Butch Cassidy, who lived around the corner from me, and he said, I know there's a brother around the corner from me that DJs. He's good. And he brought me up to Spectrum City's office, and they were like, "Okay, you down with Spectrum?" I had this conversation with Keith Shockley recently. They didn't even really test me or nothing. They just took me in.
That's
They just took
wild.
me in. Yeah, they just took me in. So that's how I got. That's how I initially got with that crowd. Then I eventually, you know, left Spectrum, and then when the record deal came about with Def Jam, um, Chuck came to me and asked me to DJ for the group because Keith was more of a blender, Keith Shockley, and I was more of the scratch DJ. So they wanted, being a hip hop group, they wanted a scratch DJ. So they asked me to go on board, and the rest is history.
Gotcha. And then how, when, and why did you get the or pick the name Terminator X?
I did not. So I was, I used to be known as DJ Mellow D. They play on the name Melody, obviously. It had nothing, no D has nothing to do with my name, but I don't know. It's just what I did. There was I think there was a guy in a local DJ group that was Mellow something else, and I kind of took that. Back then, everybody was Grandmaster or Mellow or that type of thing. It was just a thing at the time. Anyway, and like Keith Shockey was Grand Wizard KG. You just picked up those names. Anyway, the one day, early in the recording, I guess it was kind of. It was after the recording of the single, and then I don't know if it's before the album was finished, the first album, Your Bum Rush the Show, or not, but somewhere in between the first album and Rebel Without a Pause, Chuck and Flavor drove to my house. I'm sorry, Chuck and Hank Shockley drove to my house, and Hank was like, "Yo, you gonna be?" It was like, "You gonna be Terminator X?" And I said, I thought about it. I was like, I'm not mad at that name. And to this day, I don't know whether it was whether it was Chuck or Hank or a combination of the two who came up with that name. I guess you can ask it's Chuck, but yeah. So they thought of that name, and then I took it and I turned it into such a name that I felt it need to be brought to life. So that's what I did. I did the thing with the shades. I used to do these things in the tour where I would do this before DMX did it.
No, I
Before
remember. I
the
remember seeing it myself.
yeah,
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 I
yeah. So
remember.
I was the first one to do that. I'm just saying. But so I developed the character Terminator, this ominous character Terminator X. And I've had people. Chuck told me I don't. This is secondhand information, but he told me that Shaq was like, man, I wanted to be Terminator X when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
But a lot of people were like, man, you the reason I got into DJing and that kind of thing. So there's some, you know, so and and thinking back, I don't know if I purposely did it, but I just did it. I just felt like that was a name that needed to be presented.
Hmm.
So I kind of built the character Terminator X.